Touch it, Omega, Brooke Harlow said, and the entire royal courtyard began to laugh before Lily Carter even took one step. The sound rolled over the stone like winter rain, cold and sharp, filling every corner of the Alpha King's palace with the same message Lily had heard all her life. Weak, useless, forgettable. She stood in the center of the courtyard with a bucket still in one hand and a rag clutched in the other, her pale fingers stiff from scrubbing the floors since before sunrise. Around her, ranked wolves in black coats and silver pins watched from the steps, the balconies, the iron gates, their smiles bright with cruelty because they all knew what had just been dragged in from the northern border. Titan, the Alpha King's war beast, towered beyond the line of guards, bigger than any wolf Lily had ever seen, its dark fur streaked with rain and battlefield dust, its massive shoulders rising and falling as silver chains held it back. Every breath from its jaws came out like smoke in the cold air. Every low sound in its chest made the guards tighten their grip. No healer would come near it. No warrior would meet its eyes. Even the strongest men in the court stood several feet away, pretending fear was caution. But Lily saw what they refused to see. Beneath the beast's terrifying size, beneath the scars, beneath the chains, there was pain. One side of Titan's head was marked with dark red stains, and near its eye, half hidden in matted fur, a thin black-silver thorn glinted like a sliver of night. It was not raging because it was evil. It was raging because it hurt. Brooke stepped closer, her white silk dress untouched by the mud, her golden hair pinned like a crown she had not yet earned. "Go on," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Show us how brave the little kitchen Omega is. Or are you only good at cleaning after your betters?" More laughter. Someone called Lily a ghost scent. Someone else said Titan would not even notice something so small before knocking her aside. Lily's cheeks burned, but she did not look at them. She looked at the beast. Titan's golden eyes were wild, unfocused, filled with the kind of panic no one in that courtyard cared to name. A guard shoved Lily forward. Her shoes scraped the wet stone. The bucket tipped, water spilling across her feet. She should have run. Every instinct told her to lower her head, apologize, disappear. That was how weak Omegas survived. But Titan's breath hitched, almost like a broken whimper buried beneath a growl, and something in Lily's chest answered it. She took one step, then another. The courtyard quieted, not from mercy, but hunger. They wanted to see her fail. They wanted a story to tell at dinner. Lily stopped an arm's length from the beast, close enough to feel the heat of its breath against her face. The chain strained. The guards cursed under their breath. Brooke smiled. Lily lifted her shaking hand and whispered, I know it hurts." Then she touched Titan's muzzle. The world seemed to freeze. The beast did not snap. It did not lunge. Its growl faded into a trembling breath. Slowly, impossibly, Titan lowered its enormous head until its blood-marked brow rested against Lily's palm, gentle as a tired child leaning into the only kindness it had found. The laughter died, so suddenly the silence felt louder than thunder. Brooke's smile vanished. The guards stared. Above them, on the palace steps, a tall man in a black coat stood motionless, his eyes burning gold beneath the shadow of his crown. Alpha King Caleb Blackwood had seen everything. And when his voice finally cut through the courtyard, it was not soft, and it was not grateful. It was a command sharp enough to make every wolf bow their head. "Seize her." The guards moved at once, but not with the confidence Lily expected. They came toward her as if she were more dangerous than the beast behind her, boots splashing through the spilled water, hands hovering near the silver restraints at their belts. Lily did not fight them. Her knees felt hollow, her breath caught somewhere high in her chest, and her palm still tingled where Titan had lowered its head into her touch. She had done nothing but offer kindness, yet the way the court stared at her made it feel as though she had cracked open the palace itself and revealed something buried underneath. Alpha King Caleb Blackwood descended the steps slowly, each movement controlled, each footfall silencing the whispers before they could grow. He was taller up close than Lily had imagined, dressed in black wool and dark leather, his pale face unreadable beneath wind-tossed black hair, his golden eyes fixed not on Titan, but on her hand. The hand that had touched what no one else could. The hand that had not been lost. "Your name?" he said. Lily swallowed. "Lily Carter, Your Majesty." A few courtiers laughed under their breath, as though her name was too ordinary for the impossible thing they had witnessed. Brooke Harlow lifted her chin from the edge of the crowd, already recovering her smile. She works in the kitchens, Brooke said sweetly. No rank, no family worth naming, no sense strong enough to prove she is even a proper Omega. Caleb did not look at Brooke. I did not ask you. The words landed softly, but the courtyard tightened around them. Brooke went pale with anger. Lily felt the guard's close silver cuffs around her wrists, not painfully, but firmly enough to remind her that mercy had not arrived. I did not mean to touch him, she whispered. He was hurt. Caleb finally looked into her eyes, and Lily almost wished he had not. There was no warmth there. Only suspicion sharpened by years of ruling wolves who lied with smiles and bowed with knives hidden behind their backs. Titan does not allow touch, he said. Not from healers. Not from generals. Not from kings. Behind Lily, Titan gave a low sound, deep enough to tremble through the stone beneath her shoes. The guard stiffened. One of them pulled Lily farther away, and the sound became a warning. Every chain on Titan went taut. Silver links scraped against the ground. A guard shouted for distance. Another raised a command whistle to his mouth. Lily turned her head just enough to see Titan staring at her, not at the armed wolves, not at the king, but at her, as if the space between them hurt more than the wound near its eye. Stop pulling her, Caleb ordered. The guard froze. For one strange second, Lily thought he had spoken to protect her. Then Caleb stepped closer and lowered his voice. Until I know what she is, she stays alive. What? She is. Not who. The words sank into Lily colder than rain. They led her through the palace gates while the court parted around her, as if weakness had turned contagious. Whispers followed her down the long marble hallways. Witch. Curse-bearer. False Omega. Some said she had bewitched the Alpha King's beast. Some said Titan had bowed because it smelled death on her. Lily kept her head down, counting each step so she would not think about the way Caleb walked behind her without making a sound. She was not taken to the servant quarters. She was not taken before a healer. She was brought to a narrow holding room beneath the east wing, where the stone walls held the cold like a secret and a single barred window showed a strip of gray afternoon sky. The cuffs were removed. The door shut. The lock turned. Only then did Lily let her hands shake. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. In the palace above, life continued with the cruel ease of people who had already decided what she was. But far across the grounds, beyond the walls and iron gates, Titan began to roar. The sound rolled through the palace like thunder trapped underground. Dust fell from the ceiling. The iron latch on Lily's door shivered. Somewhere, men shouted. Somewhere, metal strained. Then came Caleb's voice, distant but unmistakable, cutting through the chaos with command after command. Lily pressed her palm to the cold stone wall, and the tingling in her hand returned. Not pain, not magic she understood. A pull, a thread. By nightfall, the palace had gone quiet in the wrong way. No servants came with food. No counselor came with questions. Only a young guard stopped outside her door and whispered to another, "The beast will not eat. It will not drink. It keeps looking toward her cell." Lily closed her eyes as a chill moved through her. She had not been locked away because they thought she had committed a crime. She had been locked away because Titan, the Alpha King's beast, had chosen the one girl in the palace no one believed was worth choosing. By dawn, the palace had stopped pretending Lily was only a servant. No one said she mattered, not out loud, but the way the guards watched her door had changed. They no longer leaned against the wall or joked when they passed. They stood straight, hands near their belts, eyes narrowed as if the quiet girl inside the holding room might open her mouth and bring the east wing down. When Caleb Blackwood arrived, the corridor fell so silent Lily could hear the rain ticking against the narrow window behind her. He did not apologize for the locked door. He did not soften his voice. He simply looked at the untouched tray beside her bed, then at her pale face, and said, "Titan has refused food and water for 14 hours. You are being moved." Lily rose slowly, her body stiff from the cold stone room. Moved where? Caleb studied her as though every answer she gave might reveal a hidden blade. Near the royal stable. That was how Lily came to sleep in a small servant chamber at the far end of the beast wing, 3 doors down from the iron enclosure built for the Alpha King's war creature. It was not comfort. It was not trust. The room had a narrow cot, a cracked mirror, and a window sealed shut against the late October wind. Derek Walsh stood guard outside with 2 warriors and made sure she knew she was still a prisoner. "Do not mistake a closer cage for kindness," he told her when Caleb left. Brooke Harlow arrived before sunset with 2 ladies from the court, her perfume too sweet for the damp hallway, her smile polished and cruel. She looked Lily up and down, from her plain gray dress to her worn shoes, and laughed softly. "The beast gets a kennel, and the Omega gets the room beside it. How fitting." Lily kept her hands folded. She had learned long ago that silence could be armor when she had nothing else. But that night, silence failed. Near midnight, a sound scraped through the walls, slow and heavy, like stone being dragged across stone. Lily sat up on the cot. Another scrape followed. Then a low, broken rumble that made the floor tremble beneath her bare feet. Titan was awake. No, not awake. Restless. Hurting. The guards shouted in the hall, but their voices held fear instead of command. Lily moved to the door and pressed her hand to the wood. "Please," she called. "Let me see him." Derek answered from the other side. "Get back in bed." The scraping grew louder. Metal groaned. Something inside the stable struck the wall with enough force to send dust falling from the ceiling. Lily felt that strange pull again, the invisible thread winding around her ribs and tugging her forward. She did not wait for permission. When the guard at her door turned toward the noise, Lily slipped past him, moving down the corridor before fear could catch her. The royal stable doors stood open, lantern lights spilling across the floor. Inside, Titan paced within the reinforced enclosure, its massive body tense, its head lowering again and again as if trying to escape something beneath its own skin. The warriors backed away when Lily entered. "Do not," one of them warned. But Titan stopped. The air changed. Lily stepped closer, carrying nothing but a basin of warm water someone had abandoned near the wall and a clean cloth folded over its rim. "It is me," she whispered. "I am here." Titan lowered itself slowly, not bowing this time, but offering the wounded side of its head. Lily knelt outside the bars and reached through carefully. The fur beneath her fingers was coarse, rain-cold at the edges, fever-warm near the hidden thorn. She cleaned gently, wiping away dirt and dried red streaks until the dark mark beneath became visible. At first she thought it was a scar. Then the lantern flame shifted, and Lily saw a line of symbols carved into the fur and skin in a pattern too deliberate to be an accident. The marks were thin, silver-dark, and ancient, curving behind Titan's ear like a secret written where no healer would dare look. Lily's breath caught. She had never studied Old Royal script. She had never been taught any language beyond the prayers whispered in servant halls. Yet the meaning rose in her mind with terrifying clarity. Bound beast. Bound king. Sealed wolf. She pulled her hand back as if the words had burned her. At the stable entrance, Caleb stood in the shadows, his golden eyes fixed on the symbols she had uncovered. For the first time since Lily had met him, the Alpha King looked not angry, but afraid. Caleb crossed the stable without a word, but every guard moved back before he reached them, as if his silence carried more force than shouting. Lily stayed on her knees beside Titan, the damp cloth still caught between her fingers, her heart beating so fast it seemed to shake the lantern light. The symbols behind Titan's ear glimmered faintly beneath the cleaned fur, thin and dark against the beast's skin, and the air around them felt suddenly too small. Caleb stopped beside the enclosure and stared at the marks as though they belonged to a nightmare he had spent years trying to bury. "Read it again," he said. Lily looked up at him. "I do not know how. You read it a moment ago." His voice was low, controlled, but something underneath it had changed. Not fear alone. Recognition. Lily swallowed and forced herself to look back at the symbols. They shifted in her mind, not like letters on a page, but like memories surfacing through deep water. Bound beast. Bound king. Sealed wolf. She whispered the words, and Titan let out a quiet breath, pressing its head closer to the bars. Caleb's jaw tightened. For 1 second, the Alpha King looked less like a ruler carved from winter and more like a man hearing his own sentence spoken aloud. "Who taught you that language?" he asked. "No one." "Who sent you here?" "No one." "Who told you to touch him?" Lily's fingers curled around the cloth. "No one. I saw that he was suffering." The answer should have been too simple for a king to believe, and maybe it was. Before Caleb could speak again, Footsteps rushed into the stable. Brooke Harlow swept in with Mason Reed at her side, both dressed for court even though dawn had barely touched the windows. Brooke's gaze flicked from Titan to Lily, and her mouth tightened with satisfaction. "Your Majesty, this is exactly why she should never have been brought inside the palace. Now she is kneeling beside forbidden royal markings and pretending she can read them." Mason's silver hair was combed neatly back, his council robe fastened with a black pin shaped like a wolf's head. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The council must question her immediately. If an unranked Omega can read sealed script, then either she is lying about her origin or someone has placed her here to endanger the throne. Lily stood slowly. Her knees trembled, but she refused to look away. "I have never endangered anyone." Brooke laughed softly. "You touched the Alpha King's beast, caused a panic in the courtyard, and now expect us to believe ancient words simply appear in your head because you feel sorry for animals." Caleb turned his eyes to Brooke, and the stable cooled with his attention. "Enough." The word cut cleanly through her smile. Still, he did not defend Lily. Not yet. By noon, she stood in the high council chamber beneath a ceiling painted with wolves running through a silver moon. The room was built to make anyone feel small, with marble pillars, black banners, and 12 council seats raised above the center floor. Lily stood alone below them in her plain gray dress, while ranked families watched from the gallery. Mason asked about her parents. She had no answer. He asked why her scent was faint. She had heard that question all her life. He asked why her wolf was weak. Lily looked down at her hands and said, "Maybe she learned to hide because everyone who heard her wanted her quiet." A murmur moved through the chamber. Brooke leaned forward from the gallery. "Or maybe there is no wolf worth finding." Lily's face warmed, but her voice stayed steady. "I am not powerful. I am not trained. I am not noble." But when Titan was hurting, every powerful person in that courtyard stepped back. She lifted her gaze to the council. If compassion is witchcraft, then this palace has been without magic for a very long time. Silence fell so completely that even the torches seemed to hold still. Caleb, seated on the black throne at the end of the chamber, did not speak. But for the first time, he looked at Lily as if she was not a threat, not a servant, not a mistake in his court. He looked at her as if he had been wrong, and the thought troubled him more than any curse. Brooke waited until the council chamber had almost decided to send Lily back to the holding room before she rose from her seat with the soft grace of someone stepping onto a stage. "Your Majesty," she said, folding her hands at her waist. "If this girl truly has not bewitched the royal beast, then proving it should be simple." Lily felt the room turn toward Brooke before Brooke even looked at her. That was the frightening thing about cruelty dressed in silk. It rarely needed to shout. Mason Reed leaned back in his council chair, his expression calm, but his eyes were bright with interest. "What do you suggest, Miss Harlow?" Brooke smiled. "A public test. No chains. No bars. Let Titan stand before her in the lower courtyard. If the beast recognizes her by choice, he will remain calm. If not, then the entire court will see what happens when a kitchen Omega lies about sacred things." A chill passed through Lily so sharply that her fingers curled into the skirt of her gray dress. Around the chamber, whispers bloomed like frost. A test sounded fair to people who had nothing to lose. To Lily, it sounded like being placed in the center of a storm and told not to tremble. Caleb did not answer immediately. His golden gaze moved from Brooke to Mason, then finally to Lily. For one strange heartbeat, she thought he might refuse. Then Mason spoke, smooth as polished stone. "The court needs certainty. Fear grows quickly when answers are hidden." Caleb's jaw hardened. "The test will be controlled." Brooke lowered her eyes, hiding satisfaction. "Of course, Your Majesty." By late afternoon, the lower courtyard was crowded again, but this time no one laughed openly. They watched Lily as if she had become a locked door, and every person there wanted to know what waited behind it. The sky above the palace hung low and gray, and the air carried the smell of wet stone, pine smoke, and too many nervous wolves standing too close together. Derek Walsh escorted Lily from the side passage, his grip tight on her arm until Caleb looked at him. Derek released her at once. "Stand on the mark," he muttered. A white circle had been painted in the center of the courtyard, 20 feet from the stable gate. Lily stepped into it, her worn shoes nearly disappearing beneath the hem of her borrowed dress. She did not know when Brooke had touched the fabric. She only knew that as the wind shifted, Titan's distant growl changed. It deepened. It sharpened. Caleb heard it too. His eyes narrowed toward the stable. The gate opened. Titan came out without chains. Every breath in the courtyard vanished. The beast moved like a shadow given weight, enormous and silent, his golden eyes fixed on Lily. At first, Lily thought he was simply coming to her. Then the scent hit her, bitter and wrong, clinging to the lower edge of her dress. Not her scent, not fear. Something planted, something meant to provoke. Her heartbeat stumbled. Brooke stood near the steps, one hand at her throat, performing concern so perfectly only the smile in her eyes betrayed her. Titan lowered his head. His shoulders tensed. A warning murmur traveled through the guards. "Do not run," Caleb said, his voice cutting across the courtyard. Lily could not tell whether the command was for her or for every wolf preparing to panic. Titan surged forward. The world narrowed to pounding paws, gray sky, and the thin circle beneath her feet. Lily wanted to move. Every part of her begged to move. Instead, she held out both hands, palms open, and whispered the only thing that came to her. It was not a spell. It was not a prayer she had been taught. It was a melody, low and trembling, rising from somewhere older than memory. The sound shook at first, then steadied. Titan reached her in a rush of wind. His jaws closed on the edge of her dress. Gasps broke through the courtyard. Brooke lifted one hand as if ready to cry out in triumph. But Titan did not touch Lily. He pulled the hem away from her body and tore free the strip of cloth carrying the poisoned scent, flinging it across the stones as if rejecting the lie itself. Then he stepped in front of Lily, placing his massive body between her and the court. Caleb rose from the steps, his expression no longer cold, but lethal in its stillness. "Someone," he said quietly, "tried to make my beast attack an innocent girl." The courtyard did not erupt after Caleb spoke. It froze. Even the wind seemed to pause against the palace walls, as if the stones themselves wanted to hear who would breathe wrong first. Brooke lowered her hand slowly, the concern on her face thinning into something brittle. Mason Reed looked calm, but Lily noticed the smallest movement of his fingers against the arm of his council chair, a tap, then stillness, then another tap. Caleb ordered the poisoned strip of fabric sealed in glass and sent every courtier back inside under guard. No accusations were made in public. No names were spoken. That was somehow worse. By nightfall, the palace felt like a house holding its breath. Lily was returned to the small room near the royal stable, not as a prisoner exactly, but not free either. 2 guards stood outside her door. Titan stood beyond 3 iron gates. Caleb had not come to question her again. Lily told herself she was relieved, but the memory of his eyes stayed with her, not cold now, not even suspicious, but searching, as if he had begun to see a shape in the dark and feared what it might become. Rain tapped against the sealed window. Somewhere far below, a clock struck midnight. Then Lily heard it. Not a roar, not a scrape. 3 soft knocks against stone. She sat up. The sound came again. Slow, patient, intentional. When she opened her door, the guards were gone. The corridor lanterns burned low, their flames bending toward the stable wing though there was no wind. Titan waited at the far end of the hall, impossibly silent for something so enormous. The iron gates behind him hung open. Lily's breath caught. "You are going to get me blamed for something again," she whispered. Titan turned and walked away. He did not look back until he reached the stairs leading down into the old East Foundation, a section of the palace servants said had been sealed since before Caleb became king. Lily should have returned to her room. She should have called for a guard. Instead, she followed. The air grew colder with every step. The polished marble gave way to rough stone, and the palace sounds faded until there was only Titan's steady breathing and Lily's bare feet against the floor. At the bottom waited a corridor she had never seen, lined with covered portraits and doors marked with silver wax seals. Titan stopped before the last door. It was taller than the others, made of dark wood banded in black iron, and across its center was the same ancient script carved behind Titan's ear. Lily lifted a trembling hand. Before she could touch it, Caleb's voice came from the stairs behind her. "Step away from that door." She turned. He stood halfway down, coat unfastened, black hair damp from the rain, golden eyes fixed on Titan with quiet fury. "Did you bring her here?" Titan lowered his head, but did not move. Caleb came closer, and the pressure of his presence filled the corridor like a storm trapped underground. That room has been sealed for 20 years. Lily looked from him to the markings. Why? Caleb's face closed. Because everyone inside that story is dead. The word should have ended it. Instead, the seal on the door began to glow, faint as moonlight beneath ice. Lily felt warmth bloom in her palm, and the mark hidden under her skin answered. She stared at her own hand in terror. I am not doing that. Caleb reached for her, then stopped before touching her wrist. His voice dropped to something quieter than command. Lily, what are you? She did not have an answer. Titan pressed one massive paw against the door and bowed his head to her, not asking, not forcing, only waiting. Lily placed her palm over the glowing seal. The iron bands shivered. The silver wax softened like frost beneath sunrise. With a sound like a long-held breath finally released, the door opened. Inside was not a dungeon or an armory. It was a bedroom preserved in dust and shadow, with pale curtains, a cracked cradle, and a portrait above the cold fireplace. Lily stepped in before she knew she was moving. The woman in the painting had soft brown hair, pale skin, and eyes shaped exactly like hers. Caleb stopped beside her, all the color leaving his face. No, he whispered. That is impossible. For several seconds, no one moved inside the sealed room. Dust drifted through the moonlit air like pale ash, and the portrait above the fireplace watched them with Lily's face from another lifetime. Caleb stood beside her, his breath measured too carefully, his gaze locked on the painted woman as if one blink might make the past vanish again. Her name was Evelyn Vale, he said at last, and the name slipped into the room like a key turning in a forgotten lock. She was the last Lunablood, healer of the royal line. She vanished the same winter my father died, along with her newborn daughter. Lily could not feel her hands. The cradle near the window was small, its white blanket folded with painful care, as if someone had expected a baby to be placed back there any moment. On the pillow lay a silver-threaded ribbon, faded with age. Lily reached for it, and the mark beneath her skin warmed before her fingers touched the cloth. Images flickered in her mind, too soft to be memories and too sharp to be dreams. A woman's voice humming in the dark, heavy footsteps beyond a door, rain against glass, a desperate whisper, hide her where no crown can find her. Lily stepped back, shaking her head. I was raised outside Denver, she whispered, by a woman who said she found me on a church doorstep. I am nobody. Caleb looked at her then, and something in his guarded face broke without becoming gentle. No, Lily, I do not think you ever were. Behind them, Titan gave a low warning sound. Caleb turned first. The corridor beyond the open door was empty, but the air had shifted. The palace was awake in the wrong places. Far above, bells began to ring, not the silver bells for ceremony, but the iron bells for breach. Caleb caught Lily's arm lightly, careful not to hurt her, and guided her out of the room. Stay behind me. But Mason Reed had not needed proof. He had only needed fear. By the time Caleb reached the main stairway, council guards were already spreading through the east wing with orders sealed in black wax. Mason claimed the Alpha King's beast had broken into a forbidden royal chamber under Lily's influence. He claimed the weak Omega had opened a sealed bloodline vault, disturbed old curses, and placed the throne in danger. Brooke stood beside him in the gallery, her face pale and perfect, playing the shocked witness while her eyes followed Lily like a knife wrapped in lace. Caleb dismissed the accusation with one cold command, but Mason did not argue with him there. He only bowed and retreated, because his real move had already begun. Later that night, while Caleb was pulled into emergency council, Derek Walsh came to Lily's door with 2 silent guards, and a message that sounded official enough to open locks. The king wants you moved, he said. Lily did not believe him, but Titan was not in the stable. Caleb was not in the hall. The palace corridors seemed longer than they had before, lit by low lamps and filled with too many corners. Derek led her not toward the royal wing, but down toward the service passage behind the old courtyard. Lily stopped. This is not the way. Derek smiled without warmth. You learn to read dead languages, but you still cannot tell when to keep walking. The 2 guards stepped away, unwilling to look directly at her. Derek drew a small silver chain from his coat, not a weapon raised in rage, but a quiet tool meant to leave no story except the one Mason wanted told. Lily's body went cold. She backed toward the wall, every lesson of survival screaming for silence. But silence had never saved her. I am not going with you. Derek's smile faded. You do not give orders. Neither do you, Lily said, and though her voice trembled, it did not break. Not to me. Not anymore. Somewhere beneath the courtyard, Titan roared. The sound was muffled, strained, wrong. Derek flinched. Lily understood at once. They had trapped the beast to make him look guilty, to make the court believe Titan had turned savage because of her. The mark on her wrist lit through her sleeve, pale and fierce. Derek reached for her, but the floor shook before he touched her. A black shape filled the passage entrance, enormous, chained in silver light, eyes burning through the dark. Titan had come, dragging the trap with him, not to attack, but to stand between Lily and the lime meant to bury her. Then Caleb's voice thundered from the far end of the hall, colder than winter over open water. Step away from her, Derek. The moment Caleb spoke, Derek dropped the silver chain as if it had burned through his palm. He tried to kneel, tried to shape his face into obedience, but the truth had already entered the passage with the Alpha King behind it. Titan stood between Lily and the guards, his great body trembling beneath the silver trap, not from weakness, but from restraint. He could have broken the hallway apart. He could have made every guilty wolf run. Instead, he stayed still because Lily's hand had found the fur at his shoulder, and her voice, quiet as a candle in a storm, kept him anchored. Caleb's gaze moved from Derek to the chain, then to the black wax order in the guard's hand. Mason's seal. No one spoke after that. By sunrise, the great hall was filled from black marble floor to moon-painted ceiling. Every ranked family in the royal territory had been summoned. Council members sat beneath the banners. Warriors lined the walls. Servants watched from the side doors, their faces pale with fear and hope they were too afraid to name. Lily stood in the center of the hall in the same gray dress, her wrist hidden beneath one sleeve, her heart beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. Mason Reed stood before the council dais, calm and clean and merciless. This girl opened a sealed chamber, influenced the royal beast, and caused unrest within the palace, he said. For the safety of the throne, Titan must be restrained permanently, and the Omega must be removed from royal grounds. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Brooke stepped forward beside him, her eyes shining with practiced sorrow. I warned everyone. We all wanted to believe she was harmless. But a servant who makes beasts kneel and doors open is not harmless. She is dangerous because she looks weak. Lily lifted her head. That word no longer struck the same place inside her. Weak. They had used it like a collar, like a locked door, like a name. But Titan had seen her without it. Caleb had seen her begin to step out of it. Mason raised one hand, and the side doors opened. Titan was led into the hall beneath lines of pale silver restraint, his dark fur streaked with rain, his head lowered not in defeat but in exhaustion. The sight of him drew gasps from the gallery. Brooke smiled for half a second. Mason turned to the guards. If the creature is truly corrupted, prove it before the court. Bring it forward. Titan stumbled one step, and Lily moved before anyone could stop her. Caleb rose from the throne. Lily. It was not a command. It was fear wrapped in her name. She walked to Titan anyway. The hall blurred. Around her, all banners and whispers and watching eyes, until there was only the beast who had chosen her when the world laughed. She placed both hands against his brow and began to hum the old melody, the one that had found her in the courtyard, the one hidden deeper than memory. The silver restraints brightened, then cracked with a sound like ice splitting on a frozen lake. Mason's calm broke. Stop her. No one moved. Light gathered beneath Lily's sleeve. The mark on her wrist appeared through the fabric, silver and soft and undeniable, forming the same crescent that glowed above the portrait in the sealed room. Titan lifted his head. The ancient script behind his ear faded line by line, as if the curse was being erased by moonlight. Then the beast lowered himself before Lily in the center of the great hall. Not as a trained animal, not as a weapon, as a guardian recognizing its queen. One by one, every wolf in the hall felt it. Warriors bent their heads. Servants sank to their knees. Even the council seats fell silent under the weight of what instinct knew before law could deny it. Caleb descended from the throne, each step echoing through the stunned hall. He stopped before Lily, his golden eyes bright with the full force of his wolf at last unbound. Then the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee. "The beast did not choose a servant," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "It recognized the last Lunablood healer of the royal line. It recognized the woman this court tried to bury. It recognized its queen." The great hall remained silent long after Caleb's words faded, as if the entire court had forgotten how to breathe beneath the weight of what had just been revealed. Lily stood with one hand resting on Titan's brow and the other pressed against her glowing wrist, not because she wanted to hide the mark anymore, but because she could hardly believe it belonged to her. All her life, people had named her by what they thought she lacked. No rank, no power, no scent worth respecting, no wolf worth fearing. Now the same wolves who had laughed in the courtyard knelt across the black marble floor, their heads bowed not to the king beside her, but to the quiet girl they had tried to erase. Mason Reed was the first to move. His face had lost its careful calm, and for one breath he looked like an old man watching a locked door open from the wrong side. Caleb rose from one knee without taking his eyes off the counselor. "Mason Reed, by authority of the royal line and the witness of every wolf in this hall, you are stripped of your council seat until the full investigation is complete." Mason opened his mouth, but Titan lifted his head, and whatever argument had been forming died behind his teeth. The guards moved in, not with violence, but with finality, taking his council pin and the black wax seal from his hand. Derek Walsh stood near the side doors, pale and shaking, already surrounded by royal warriors. Brooke Harlow did not kneel willingly. She lowered herself only when the wolves around her did, her silk dress pooling like spilled moonlight against the floor, her eyes fixed on Lily with hatred she no longer had the power to disguise. Caleb's voice cut through the hall again. "Every order given under false council seal will be reviewed. Every servant threatened under this roof will be heard. Every Omega bound by fear inside my palace will be freed from it." The last sentence sent a tremor through the servant rows. Lily turned then, not toward Brooke, not toward Mason, but toward the kitchen maids, stable boys, laundresses, and nameless Omegas standing in the shadow of the side doors. She saw herself in them, in their lowered eyes, their folded hands, the careful way they took up as little space as possible. Her mark dimmed into a gentle glow. "No one will be punished for being small," she said, and though her voice was quiet, it reached the farthest corners of the hall. "No one will be called useless because they survived differently. And no one will ever be forced to prove their worth by standing alone before something everyone else fears." Caleb looked at her then, and the hard lines of the Alpha King softened into something far more dangerous than power: respect. He did not claim her before the court as if she were a prize. He did not reach for her without permission. He simply stepped beside her, and let every wolf see that he stood with her. Later, when the court had emptied and the guilty had been taken away to answer for what they had done, Lily returned to the lower courtyard. Dawn had begun to silver the palace roofs. The rain had stopped. The stones where she had once stood shaking beneath laughter were clean now, shining faintly beneath the morning light. Titan walked beside her without chains, his dark fur brushed by the first gold of sunrise. He lowered himself near the white circle still painted on the ground, the place where they had tried to turn her compassion into a crime. Lily knelt and placed both hands on his head. This time, no one laughed. Caleb stopped a few feet behind her, giving her space, letting the silence belong to her first. "The kingdom will expect you to become someone else now," he said. Lily looked down at Titan's peaceful golden eyes and smiled softly. "Then the kingdom will learn patience." For the first time, Caleb smiled too, faint and real. Behind them, wolves gathered across the courtyard, not to judge, not to mock, but to stand guard.